The four sibling monsters are each so different, but they share the same dream: to get a family puppy. When the kids concoct a plan to show mom they can handle a puppy, they learn they don't always feel the same excitement about work. With the help of a few guiding moments and creativity, the siblings discover clever strategies to help them get what they truly want. Head over to themonsterjob.com to get your copy today. Today's guest is Mac Gardner, a financial literacy advocate, published author, and founder of FinLit Tech, a company that is on a mission to build a bridge between financial literacy and technology. Mac, thank you so much for being here.
Faith, thank you so much for having me. An honor.
Yes, I would love to dive into both verticals that you're in, the technology side and also the educational material side. But let's start with FinLit Tech. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So, when we were looking at the landscape of fintech services, what we found, Faith, was that there is a bunch of technology out there to help you do things with your money, right? Banking, investing, insurance. You can grab your phone, and you can take out a mortgage, in about 30 seconds. But what we realized was that there's not a lot of technology out there that's actually teaching people what to do with your money. So I am a certified financial planner. I've been in the business for 20 plus years and wrote a book called The Four Money Bears to help parents with young children start the conversation about money. And a lot of the financial technology tools and resources out there are analog, books, brochures, things that are maybe not as technologically advanced as the tools to do things with money. So that's when we started FinLit Tech, and our mission is to build a bridge between financial literacy and financial technology.
Interesting. And what a time to leverage technology for the things that we need to accomplish. I mean, there are apps for everything, so might as well build technology that could be educational. Do you have an app that is out right now or a tool that is already out right now?
So the Four Money Bears book we wrote years ago, as I mentioned earlier, to help parents with young children start the conversation about money. That's our analog version. We are actually in the process of developing the Four Money Bears Berryville. It's a first of its kind financial education ecosystem that teaches financial literacy, analyzes the user progress, and then tracks that progress over time. So we are working diligently to get it ready and get it out to folks Q4 of this year.
Amazing. What do you mean tracking progress?
So one of the big issues that we see when it comes to financial education of financial literacy, right? It's not a here's a book, read it, and then all of a sudden you're financially literate. It takes time.
Done. I now know Kung Fu.
You're done.
Right.
You're financially literate. You're smart. It takes time, and in fact, if my kids were here, they'd say, "Yes, Papa, we know habits, behaviors, traits. Good financial habits become good financial behaviors, which eventually become good financial traits." So, when we say track, we need to be able to, especially when you're starting the education process at early age, which what the Four Money Bears Berryville aims to do is to engage at that K through 5. A lot of studies show that financial literacy starts as early as age 7. That's when children start connecting with money. So if we can start to teach, analyze, and see what the user is doing, and then track that progress over time to be able to show parents and the user that progress that they're achieving, we believe that can be helpful.
That's interesting that you brought up the parents. So a lot of times we hear about the education that's specific to the individual that education is targeting, but you're bringing in the parents as support. I mean, surely the parents have to offer the guidance along the way. So you're roping the parents also into this money conversation.
It has to happen because here's typically what happens, Faith. A majority of parents never got the financial literacy education or guidance themselves. In fact,
Hmm.
As of, I believe, last week, there are maybe 18 or 19 states that require any sort of financial literacy uh, in high school to graduate. And that's a small percentage of the 50 states that are out there. And that's 17, 18 years old when you're getting this education. And if the behavior started at 7, 8, 9, there's a big gap there. So we believe there's a huge opportunity for parents and their children to learn through the game, through the book, and just having those conversations, because that's typically where a child gets their first habits from. Typically, their parent spending habit. And so, if the parent and the child can come together and learn and understand the four functions of money, we think that could be extremely beneficial to the household and eventually the community.
Well, and what an approachable way for an adult to learn, to just simply come alongside your child as you're trying to help prepare them in a better way than we might have been prepared. Now, other than having to break a bad habit or create new habits, what are some of the benefits of starting that early? I mean, age 7 is remarkably earlier than how most people bring in financial education into, attempts into curriculum.
One of the big benefits we see in starting this process early is, the Four Money Bears book introduces children and their parents to the fact that you have four options when it comes to money, right? Spending, saving, investing, and giving. And so I like to discuss what I call the three R's of our relationship with money. One, we realize what money is. Someone puts money in our hands and, hey, here's money. And the second is then we recognize what it does. And if your recognition of the function of money is only twofold, spending and saving, it limits the third R, which is rationalize how to use that money, right? So if at age 7, we get that rationalization of, okay, yes, one, we can spend it. Two, we can save it. Three, we can invest this money. So we can start owning things. Instead of buying Nike shoes, we can actually own shares of Nike. Instead of going to Starbucks all the time, we can actually own shares of Starbucks. And then the fourth function is giving. So imagine a world where from as early as age 7, we realize what our options are, and then we can start rationalizing how to use it. And then imagine that 7-year-old, through the technology that's available, to own fractional shares, owning $5 worth of Nike, owning and building a portfolio. Imagine that runway that person has to be able to start investing. Puts a lot less stress on the government. It puts a lot less stress on having to find money to pay for school, because we're starting that investing, that long-term investing conversation and process early. So that's what we believe are some of the big benefits to having those conversations early.
Now, those are really big concepts, but tell our audience that those big concepts are not in your children's book.
No. So in the children's book, we're not trying to get into what stock to buy or the difference between the different types of commodities out there. What we're really trying to express to young children is the fact that you have options. It's not just blowing all the money when you go to the store. It's understanding that your money can work harder for you than you can work for your money if you allow it to start doing that early in your financial life journey.
And knowing the options, I mean, isn't that the important resource that's really creating a divide with the social and making it a real social justice issue? Because what we're talking about is people having a difference of opportunity, but it's not the monetary thing that is creating that disparity, really. Isn't it the options?
The options, and I would say the stories. So I'm a huge believer, Faith, in that all we are at the end of our days is a collection of stories, right? So I have 3 children. My children will hear stories of what an IRA is, what a 401k is, what a stock is, what a bond is, because our kids live in this world. Papa Bear comes home and he talks about his day at work, and we talk about all these different things in the house. So that, I believe, is a huge driver, is a large proportion of communities, underserved, overlooked communities, these stories aren't being told. And so that's why we believe the Four Money Bears book can be so impactful, and it has been, because it allows a parent to start reading and sharing those stories and bringing an awareness that may not have been there before. And once that awareness is there as to what the options are, we can then find the tools, which is the technology part, which we're so excited to build.
Now, what are some of the interesting feedback or comments that you've been receiving from people who have read your book with their children?
Some of the best compliments we've received is, Mac, I know you wrote this book for children, and I know it looks pretty and it has bears, and every kid loves bears, but thank you for not making it too kiddie. We put worksheets in the back of the book. We actually, every book has a budget for the year where a parent and a child can come together and learn together. And so that's, I think, some of the best feedback that we've received. Our book is used by financial advisors across the country. I personally think that financial advisors have an amazing ability to provide education in their communities because we work in this space on a regular basis. And if you can take care of a client and take care of their child and educate the next generation, it helps everyone involved. So I think that's probably the biggest feedback we've got is that, hey, I know you made it for kids, but thank you for making it digestible for a parent too.
Oh, that's great. Have you heard from any kids?
Yeah, oh yeah, we are so blessed. We hear from children, we hear from parents. The book's available on Amazon, so we have great Amazon reviews. I think one of the funny stories though that I've received from a parent with their child is the child is reading the book and they're reading with the kid, and I think the child's like 7, 8 years old, and she said, Mac, he came into the room while I was getting ready in the morning, and he looked at me, and said, Mama, when I get older, I want to drive a Maserati. So in order for me to have a Maserati, I've got to be an investor bear. She
Oh,
was floored. He was like, because I need to make a lot of money. And that story has stuck with me for years now because it truly shows that um, a lot of times children are overlooked and parents think they can't understand, and but they can understand these concepts, and the earlier you share it with them, the better.
I love that. And it highlights the fact that once we create a vision for what we want, or we can clearly see our goal, we need to be able to know how to get there. And it sounds like things like the Four Money Bears can help connect those dots. If a child knows how to dream, knows how to create a goal for themselves, and now understands new principles that might help them get there, I mean, the motivation will be built in themselves on their own. That is incredible. I love that.
I agree.
Now,
I agree.
tell me what prompted you to write the Four Money Bears. Are you you're a father? You mentioned your children earlier. Were you having conversations about money at home and saw this, or what prompted the writing of the book?
So my first book is actually titled Motivate Your Money. And I wrote
Okay.
that book for the big people because of my years spent in the financial advisory business, working with clients, and just realizing that there was a sad, sad state of financial education, and just being able to break down the financial concepts that we take for granted in this business and make things easy to understand. I call them my Mac nuggets. I simplify things for folks. And so one of my clients came to me. She's actually on the board of a not-for-profit organization in Houston. And she said, Mac, I love the first book. Would you be open to writing something or creating something for children? And we both had young kids at the time. And in my first book, I talk about the 5 steps to financial success, right? You have to plan accordingly, spend cautiously, save diligently, invest wisely, and give generously. And if you do those 5 things over time, really neat things can happen. And so I said, okay, what could a child connect to? Kids love bears. Also, in our home, I'm Papa Bear, my wife is Mama Bear, and our kids are the baby bears. And so the Four Money Bears book is actually the story of me and my wife teaching our kids about money and introducing this concept of these four bears that live in the woods, that live together, and they have to learn about money together. And so that's really what drove the creation of the Four Money Bears is a client that needed help talking to their kids about money.
And I bet your kids so enjoy knowing that they're represented in the book, and it probably helps a lot, stimulate a lot of conversation. Do you find that money conversations are evolving? I don't know how old your kids are. How old are your kids?
Oldest is 16, daughter. Next is 15, son. And the 8-year-old is the baby. And when I wrote the book, he was a year old-ish,
Oh,
year or two old. So the neatest thing about having that book, and then one of the neatest experiences is when he got old enough to realize that the baby bear in the book and the little yellow onesie was him. He said,
Oh, that's so
"Oh,
fun.
yeah, it was an awesome experience.
I love that. Oh, I can only imagine. I'm so curious to see what kind of conversations your family must have had at home. Are there nuggets that you guys really held on to over the years that were constant conversation, or is it hard to remember because you just talk about money so much at home comfortably?
No, I think one of the big things that we talk about is the concept of the habits, behaviors, and traits. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. The concept of the habits, behaviors, and traits. I think we're always leaning on that to say, okay, what habits are you creating? What are you doing with your money today that can have a pretty big impact on your life down the road? So making sure those habits are positive ones, that are good ones, making sure you're not, falling into bad habits when it comes to your money decisions. The other thing too that we've started doing years ago, I actually heard this from an advisor at a conference I spoke at several years ago. When you're talking to your kids and you're saying, oh, you can't have that, don't use words like we can't afford, because you're probably lying to your child. But use words like, we choose not to spend our money this way. Money is a very powerful tool. I like to say that people care what you look like, people care what you sound like, people care where you're from. Money doesn't. Money's simply a tool. So the earlier we understand how to use that tool and how that tool can help us achieve our financial goals, achieve aspirational goals, achieve societal goals, the earlier we can do that, the better.
Now, do you have a quote that you live by?
Yeah, I have a couple Mac Nuggets. One of the ones that I try to share with the kiddos, and I try to share with people a lot, it's a funny one. Um, Two of them. One, sadly, in our society, people focus on the fruits of money, but not the roots of
Hmm.
money. And by that, people like the shiny, people like, the Joneses, and what's that, what money can get you or provide you. But there's not a big enough focus on the roots, which is the education, which is what needs to be done with money in order for that tree to flourish even more. So that's one. The other one that I like to, especially with young people who, especially when you come into a situation, you just have money. But I like to tell them, look, the rich stay rich by acting poor, the poor stay poor by acting rich,
Hmm.
which is just a way of saying, be mindful of your finances. Don't look to overspend, just work on living below your means, and amazing things can happen.
Well, thank you so much for your insight and perspective. I so appreciate your voice on this.
You're very welcome. The Four Money Bears is here to help folks, to help families. Thank you so much, Faith, for all the amazing work that you're doing. An honor again to be with you.
Thank you.
The four sibling monsters are each so different, but they share the same dream: to get a family puppy. When the kids concoct a plan to show mom they can handle a puppy, they learn they don't always feel the same excitement about work. With the help of a few guiding moments and creativity, the siblings discover clever strategies to help them get what they truly want. Head over to themonsterjob.com to get your copy today.